We all know logically what we need to do with our money. We need to spend less of it. We need to save more. We need to invest more, right? But people do not operate in the logical part of their brain when it comes to money. They operate in the emotional side.
Billy Zerillo, a financial advisor passionate about helping women gain confidence in their finances. He guides clients through major life transitions with clarity and care, making sure financial choices align with their values.
Is there a theme with how women psychologically or emotionally are attached to money that is different than men?
For some reason, men are disconnected from money in the emotional state. Not from like, oh, what does money mean to me? But it's like, what does money do for me? It's about status. What can I accomplish? What can I grab on to more of? And you see it throughout social media. And it's like, it's about the number. Where working with women, it's more, the results matter. Don't get me wrong. Like results do matter, but it's more about the journey, the why. What can I do for myself that's going to make me the best version of myself when it comes to my money?
The idea of job security is outdated as a landline. If you haven't been in a search for a while, it's probable you will at some point, by choice or not. Most executives admit to staying way too long or sense what's coming and justify staying anyway. Here, there's another reason. The faulty belief that navigating to what's next will inevitably be worse and has to suck. Screw that. Loren has spent a lifetime in corporate and executive search, calling bullshit on stale career advice that most still use. This is Career Blast in a Half, the career podcast for executives ready to cut past outdated career advice to fuel your outcomes now. So let's go.
Hello, listeners. And I want you to think about this. I mean, really, I want you to think about this. And if you're driving, don't close your eyes. You have this stuff. It's called money. And even though it looks like a bunch of dollar bills or, numbers in your bank account, it's loaded. I mean, there are so many things that are embedded, attached, old ideas, new ideas, confusion. And let's just be honest. There's a lot of booby traps that show up in our relationship with money. Today, we're talking to Billy Zerillo. Billy is an expert in all financial matters, specifically for women. And his content is exactly what drove me to invite him here today and to share with you how your relationship is impacting the decisions that you're making with respect to money, careers, your future, and your ability to get what you need in order to both exist in the marketplace today, to negotiate and to make peace with some of those relationships, but also to think about it differently. So, Billy, we are so happy to have you. I mean, I have to ask you, right? Like, give us a little bit of your backstory and why it is that your focus is on money and women and what they do with that.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for the opportunity to be on here today. I love sharing my story because stories impact people. It's the best way to impact people because they can put themselves into their story, right? The empathy behind that. And so it's a great question, right? Why, I serve women as a financial advisor, and it has to deal with my own personal story, right? And my parents, just to give kind of the Spark Notes version of it, right? My parents got divorced when I was 10. All I ever remember them doing was fighting about money. I don't remember love. I don't remember hugs. I don't remember any of that stuff. But I do remember vividly them fighting about money. And so I grew up naturally with a fear of money, right? And I grew up very fearful around it. And to piggyback off that, right, I ended up living with my mom, right? And she was a single mom, raising 2 kids. We went from living in a 5-bedroom house to living in a trailer. And and I saw my mom make a lot of mistakes. I saw my mom struggle. Right now, she's, she ended up working for the state, right? She's got a good pension. Like she's set now, but like in the beginning, it was rough, right? And it really impacted me and my own journey with money. And so when I became a financial advisor, I wanted to help people. I wanted to help people just like me, right? I wanted to help people get out from underneath all the stigmas or break the kind of the generational chain that they were in. As I started to work with clients and I started to really explore like what I wanted to do as an advisor, there was a book that kind of changed, like really, I say ruined financial advising for me in a good way. The Psychology of Money, right? Reading that book. It's an amazing book. If you haven't read it, go read it. It's not very long, right? But go read it. I read it every year because I take something new away from it. But it changed how I wanted to be a financial advisor. I started to realize that money was less about the numbers and more about the 6 inches that we have between our head, right? It was more about the mind than the actual numbers, because we all know logically what we need to do with our money. We need to spend less of it. We need to save more. We need to invest more, right? Those are all really logical things, but people do not operate in the logical part of their brain when it comes to money. They operate in the emotional side. So it's like, if these are logical, why aren't we doing them? Right? There's a cost.
So wait, I want to stop you right here because you're dropping some serious intel. Psychologically, is there a theme with how women psychologically or emotionally are attached to money that is different than men?
Yeah, 100%, right? Because I have some male clients still, right? When I was first in the industry, and now, the main part of my business is helping women. And the one major difference that I've noticed is that for some reason, men are disconnected from money in the emotional state. Like they're not really, not from like, oh, what does money mean to me? But it's like, what does money do for me? It's about status. It's about what can I accomplish? What can I grab on to more of? And you see it throughout social media. You see,
like, give us an example. Like, what does it sound like? What would we be like? All I can think about is a lot of those LinkedIn posts where it's like, I saw one last night. I finally made $1 million, right? It was like, is that one of those?
Yeah. And it's like, it's about the number. It's like, oh, I have $1 million. So because I have $1 million, right? Or because I've landed these big sales, I have status, right? I have status above.
So just the fact of the number is enough to kind of like, chest pump.
Yes. It's like, that's a great way to say it. And where we're working with women, it's more, the results matter. Don't get me wrong. Like, results do matter, but it's more about the journey, the why, the what can I do for myself that's going to make me the best version of myself when it comes to my money. It's not about, hey, I made this much money this month. It's about, what does that money do for me, right? Does that allow me to live a fulfilling life, whether that be to travel, whether that be to, impact certain organizations, or for my family. It's more so like an outwardly push.
So it's the experiences or the end game. I went on this shopping spree. I had a girls' night out, or whatever those are that are symbolic of the value of what that money can do for us.
Yes, at the end of the day, it's about accumulation for both, for male and female. It's what we are accumulating, right? Whereas, with men, it could be accumulating status and power and those types of things, where women tend to accumulate, experiences and meaning and fulfillment. Like, those are the things that they're looking for, because like, when I see it in women all the time, when they're just chasing the number, it's burnout city, right? It's when we're chasing the external, they get burnt out so quickly, right? Because women are, especially if you're a mom and you're running a business, you're wearing a lot of hats, right? And
I'll tell you this. This is very interesting because I have no issue with revealing this, but when I got remarried, it was like I had learned in my husband, that's what I call him, my husband, that I wanted to keep my money separately. And part of that was because it was exactly what you have identified. It was an opportunity to be able to kind of do whatever I wanted, have that independence, make my own choices, have autonomy. I'm not saying, don't commingle it or don't involve your partner.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I will definitely get some insights, but I earned it. I'm going to apply it and I'm going to use it, for the benefit of our family or whatever that is. But I don't feel like there's any strings attached. And so is that a common thread? And is that something that you're seeing more of with today's like financial arrangements with, I don't want to get into anybody's marriage, but just how women think about money differently?
Yeah. It's interesting because I have conversations with women, and one of the themes that patterns. I think about patterns. Like that's how my brain operates. I think that's how most people's brains operate. We're looking for patterns. And so when I'm talking to women specifically, I'm noticing patterns. One of those patterns is especially like as they experience life, a lot of what happens is I don't want to say they don't have control, but there's been a lack of control internally from their own standpoint. And so when they get into these relationships, whether it's, after a divorce or after, it doesn't even have to be a divorce, right? It could be just a long-term relationship that you were in, and it, not having that control, right? Now you're going to the other side of the coin, right? Where you're saying like, I'm going to control everything, right? And not to say that what you're doing is wrong or anything like that, right? That's how you're operating. But you said something very important, is that you can have that control, right? If you're making that money and it's your money, it's your business, right? And you want to control it, that's fine. But you said something really important, and something I teach my couples, right, is to have open communication around your money. Just because your money is separate in a separate account does not mean it's separate, right? It means that that you need to have active conversations of be like, okay, we have this money, right? What are we going to use? How are we going to use it as a team to accomplish the goals that we have together, right? Yes, like I have the freedom and the autonomy to go buy what I want, do what I want, right? That's great, but you should also have communicate. Like for instance, me and my wife, right? Like I've made a post about this where it used to scare me to spend money, right? Like I would we would spend like $100 and I would be freaking out, right? And that has a lot to do with my story, not any longer, but it's not about permission, right? We have a rule that if we are going to spend more than $150, we just check in with that other person. It's not to say like, hey, you need my permission to buy this item, right? It's, hey, I respect you enough to let you know that I'm going to be spending this money, right? And it's coming from a place of love, respect, and empathy, right? And so I think it goes back to that, is like when we don't feel like we've had control for most of our life, maybe we've been told by a lot of people to do a lot of things in our life, and maybe we don't feel like this is the first opportunity where we have control, right? And we want to experience that. And there's nothing wrong with that, but as long as we're doing it in a healthy way.
Okay, so I want to talk about the booby traps. I just want to say booby. I mean, let's be honest. What are the three most common booby traps that women fall into with respect to money? It could be unrelated from their careers, because I just want to set a baseline, right? What are the things that women do differently that kind of embroil them in some kind of ill-suited idea or outcome that comes with money?
Yeah. There's I read an article the other day. And so the number one thing that I see, right? And it said it was supposed to be a praising article, right? And it said that women are better savers than men, which is true. Women do save better than men. But the caveat to that is that they're just saving, right? And so when I'm sitting down with a lot of women business owners, they'll have a lot of cash on hand. and it's just sitting there. And so it's like there's a disconnect between, where women are saying like, hey, I'm a great saver, but I don't want to risk it. Right. And that comes from an internal kind of past story where they've experienced loss and risk, and they don't know how to quantify what the proper amount of risk they need to take. And so they get.
And when you say risk, wait, is it investing? What is the risk kind of a flag for?
Yeah. So it often comes down to investing, and they've been told for so long, right? Whether it be the society, whether it be social media, whether it be just traditional news outlets, that women are savers, that women need to be more cautious when they're buying things. And so if that message is constantly put in your head that I need to be cautious, I need to be cautious, I need to be cautious, when you see, when you see opportunities to invest, you panic because you're like, well, if I invest, there's a risk, right? There's a risk of losing money, and I don't want to lose money.
There's a risk that I'm not a good saver. Is that true?
Yes.
Right.
Yes, that I'm not a good saver, that I'm not good with my money. It goes back to I'm not good enough, right? I'm not good enough with my money. So instead of risking that, I just hold on to it. Because I can control that, right? I can control where it's at. And it's almost feeling like I'm giving up some of my control when you're really not. You're just giving it another opportunity to grow for you. And really helping women kind of figure out what calculated risk looks like, and knowing that you don't have to put all your eggs into one basket, right? To go with a financial term there.
So number one is that women are great savers, but also, I'm just going to use words that you didn't use, but also they can be good hoarders.
Yes.
Right? They're very protective over their little piece, and the opportunity there is to understand the difference between saving and calculated risk so that it develops into more.
Yeah.
Right? And to actually grow that money. I am blowing the lid off of our best kept secret, our 30-day blast program. Yeah, you heard it. 30 days. We have seen so much success for this program that past clients have landed in that 30 days and increased their compensation 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, over 100%. Now, not everybody lands and earns that much in 30 days, but my point is it prepares you. And in 30 days, if you're not out of there with a changed mindset and changed clear and simple ways to be able to navigate the market this year, then we'll gladly refund your misery and you can go back to applying now. Check out the link below for the next 30-day blast, and we would love to have you there because we live for your success, and that's what's really important. See you then. What's the second booby trap?
Booby trap number 2, and it's something I see very often, is they're very, I call it shame spending. And what that looks like is whenever they spend money on themselves, whether it be, self-care items, whether it be an investment into their own personal business, anything that's investing into them, they hesitate, right? They hesitate to make that investment, or they hesitate to spend the money. But if it's somebody else, if it's their kids, they'll spend every dime that they have, right? If it's their family, they'll spend every dime that they have. If it's a worthy cause, like a charity or something like that, they don't have a problem with that. But anytime the investment is about them, they feel a little apprehensive. They have anxiety around that because they sometimes are wary of the outcome.
What would the outcome be? What, you're selfish or you're so indulgent? What is the message?
Because anytime the message has always been, and I think I shared this with you one time, if we look at like the magazines, right? If we look at a male, we'll just call it a male magazine versus a woman's magazine. If we were to run through those pages of those magazines, there'd be 2 completely different messages. Whereas it'd be like cars, like, hey, men, like go buy this car, right? Status symbol. Whereas women, it's like, here are the 10 top tips to help you save money on your next grocery run, right? And so the messaging right there alone tells you the story, right? To that, if you go spend money on yourself, it's a frivolous thing, right? If you go get your hair done or your nails done, that's frivolous, right? There's no ROI for that, but there is an ROI for that because it makes you feel good. It maybe it's a stress reliever for you. Maybe it's just taking time away from your family and your kids because you need a little mental break, right? And that's your one piece of the day, right? So it's seen as frivolous, and it shouldn't be seen as frivolous. It should be seen as self-care, because if you can take care of yourself, if you can love yourself, you're going to be able to love the people around you even more, right? Because you're going to have more to give to them. If you're not doing those things, your battery's going to run out. You're not going to be able to love those people the same way that you want to around you.
So what's the message with heard you say, that this is actually filling up your tank, but how do you break the habit? Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I can even say that all day long, but I'm like, okay, must be nice. And how do you break the habit of kind of going from keeping it so close to the vest and letting it go without the retribution?
Yeah. So I think it's about being intentional with your money and setting up intentional accounts. And so for a lot of the women that I work with, I'll give you an example because I'm a big storyteller, right? So I have a client, makes really good money, has a really successful real estate business, right? Can easily go get her hair and nails done probably every week and not even think about it, right? But in her mind, she was like, I feel so guilty about spending this money on myself. And it was like, because she's like, I could spend it on my kids, I could spend it on my family, like in those types of things. And I asked her, I said, what if we were to set up your own account? And we called it, we'll just call her Sarah for this example. We'll call it the Sarah account. And we're going to put money in that account and you can use it for whatever you want, guilt-free, right? I'm going to show you that all the other aspects of your life are going to be good, right? But this money is for Sarah and for whatever Sarah wants to use. And she put $1,000 in there, right? And now she can go spend guilt-free because that's her money. She's identified that as the dollars that are in this account. The job of these dollars is to improve my own self-care and invest in myself. And so every month.
I really love that psychological flip, right? When it's in that separate account, somehow it changes because it's not commingled,
yes.
Right? Somehow it changes this idea. I'm actually going to do that. And I have been known, like back in the day, I used to hear like my grandma say, like, that's my mad money.
Yes.
Right. And I used to see her stuff it in her bra, that's my mad money. And I also remember even for myself that I once heard somebody call it, that's my fuck you account.
Yes.
I get to do whatever I want to do with that cash.
Yeah.
Right. And so you're advocating for that.
Yeah. You made a really good point. It's separating it in your mind, but also physically separating it and saying like, hey, this is my FU money, right? Or this is the money that, and for her, she's just like, she has no problem now. It's like it completely, like the switch just went off in her head. She's like, oh,
incredible, right?
I can use this money for me. I'm like, yes, because we're giving that dollar a job. The job of that dollar is to help you. The rest of the money has its own job to do.
Right. Oh, I like the way you phrase that. Okay. Number 3, what's the third booby trap?
The third booby trap is overwhelm. It's probably the number one reason that women come to me, and it's overwhelm. And the reason why women specifically feel this a lot is because they're asked to do a lot. They're asked to be mom. They're asked to be, the therapist, the doctor, all of the different things that women are asked to do compared to, and, as a male, I'm admitting this, right? You're asked to do a lot more than us. And when you're asked to do a lot, you're expected to do a lot, that becomes part of your identity, right? And you're thinking like, well, now I have to be the expert in all these areas, and it becomes overwhelming. And some things have to go by the wayside, right? That you can't be everything to everybody. You can't do everything, right? With the full energy that you normally have. And usually that relates to money. And what I see more than often is there's the intention that I want to be better with my money, right? I want to be better with my money. And you get a little bit of motivation, and then you start that process and you try to organize your stuff. The overwhelm hits. You're like, I don't have time for this. I got to be taking care of my family. Got to be doing this, got to be doing that. And all of a sudden 5 years goes down the road and you're like, I wish I would have did this 5 years ago. Right. And
so what's the antidote to overwhelm? Because I'm sure that part of this is, how do you set up those systems so in many ways you don't have to touch them, right? You just get to look at Sarah's account that says, okay, my Mad Money account is growing, or this or that. How do you manage that so that you can get ahead of it?
Yeah. So obviously the biggest piece of advice is have someone help you, right? But if you're not at that stage yet, it's all about small wins for me. It's all about setting up small steps that we can take to improve our finances. And the first step, the number one thing that anybody can do for their finances, it's not investing. It's not, the budgets and stuff like that. It's simply knowing what's coming in versus what's going out. That's where I usually start with clients. It's like, let's just track that. Like, we're not going to get into the weeds of, how much are you spending on food? How much are you spending over here? Like, how much are you investing over here? It's like, what do we have coming in? What do we have going out? The biggest thing that you want to do is bring awareness. And then we can start to ask questions. And so if somebody's watching this today and it's like, I don't even know where to start, that's where you start. Is like, just track.
Just doing an inventory.
Just doing an inventory of the dollars that if you have $5,000 coming in a month and you have $4,000 going out, you got a surplus, right? But if you have $5,000 coming in and you have $6,000 coming out, right? You're at a deficit, right? And just that alone will bring awareness to your spending. You'll start looking at things differently.
Okay, I'm raising my hand. I have been in that situation where I don't want to know.
Yeah.
I don't want to know because I'm afraid of what I'm going to find out. So if you're in that situation, and I got to say, like, either you're super anal about knowing where every dollar penny is, or I see a lot of women being like, kind of like me, like, okay, I'm just in denial. How do you address that?
Yeah. And so how I address that with my clients is that and it's very simple. This is going to sound like a very simple step. But it's part of the process that I take my clients through. Like, I think about like when I was first started going to the gym. Like when I was younger, I didn't want to go to the gym. I was just like, it's just a hassle to get there. And so I would just show up, whether if it was just for 5 minutes, right? Maybe it was just walking into the gym, right? And so what I'm getting at is maybe it's just opening up the app. Maybe it's not even looking at it. Maybe it's just opening up the app and just saying, I've opened my bank account today. And that could be the first step. That's because I was talking about this the other day. Confidence in your money. Nobody's confident right off the bat with their money. That's just not how that works. It takes courage. The first step of courage of opening up that app and just looking at it, and you can close it right away. But that act of doing it, right, is what I'm trying to get at, is more important than the actual number that you're seeing.
Right.
Right. Just the actual opening of the app or the actual looking of the number and putting it away, that can start to build the habit. Now you get, all right, well, hey, like I just saw there, hey, I have more money in there than I thought I did. Or, hey, maybe that is something I need to address. But it's just starting the habit.
Because tomorrow looking at the app isn't going to seem like such a big deal.
Yeah, you're not going to be like, okay, well, you know what, I can open the app today, right? And it's maybe now you're there for 10 minutes and you're looking at, oh, I just got a deposit. Okay, well, that's a win, right? Even though it could be a deposit of $10, doesn't matter, right? I had a deposit of $10. That's a win, right? You start to look for those wins, and then you start to build the confidence that you can start looking at those numbers. And then obviously that could snowball. So for me, it's always about what small steps are we taking to improve the habits that we have. Because no one's going to tomorrow that hasn't started looking at their money, all of a sudden look at their spending report and go through every line item. You're going to quit real fast. Even if the numbers look good, you're going to still be like, what is going on here?
Okay.
Yeah.
So I want to take this into a very specific area. We identified 3 booby traps, right? The first one was really about setting up a separate account and allowing yourself to have your own, I'm just going to say mad money so I don't have to swear again. The second one was, remind me of that. That was
risk.
Risk, right? Embracing risk, understanding, how to invest and you're not even talking about like billions of dollars, just being able to move that needle on some kind of, calculated worthwhile risk. And then the last one was removing some of that overwhelm and taking that blinder off.
Mm-hmm.
How do these things or another thing really impact investing in ourselves, whether it be in our careers, how money works in negotiation? I mean, just pick one lane, because obviously what you're earning and what you're investing in are 2 separate ideas, right?
Yeah.
I mean, negotiations is a separate idea than how you're now taking maybe some of that mad money and investing in yourself.
Yeah. I think it all comes down to communication, improving your communication around money. Because we're taught, we're given the talk, right? But we're never given the talk about money, right? We don't know how to talk about it, that with our own personal selves. We don't know how to communicate. And so to others about money, right? One of the taboos that you don't talk about, like at the dinner table, like religion, money, and politics, right? And I think you should talk more about money and remove the taboo-ness from it. And by doing some of those things that you had just mentioned, right? Having the account for your FU money, right? Opening the app. Those are all little things that you're doing, that you're normalizing looking at money, that you're normalizing talking about it. The more you talk about it, the more confident you become in that. That's going to lead into other areas of your life, right? When I wasn't confident about talking about money, that impacted the relationship with my wife, right? Not just in our money talks, but just any talk.
Every day.
Yeah, right. Like any talk that wasn't just like a pleasant talk, right? Like, having real conversations with your spouse, or maybe conversations with your boss, right? If you're not confident in talking about money, you're not going to ask your boss for a raise. Like, no matter how much coaching you have of like how to do it, in your mind, you're going to be like, no, I can't do that. I can't even open my app. How am I going to talk about, a raise with my boss, right? How am I going to invest my money if I can't even talk about it? So all these things that we implement with our clients are little tiny steps to help you improve your communication skills with money, how you feel about money, so that you can start to feel more confident, so that you can have those conversations with other people.
So even though this isn't applied specifically to careers, it has a spillover to it. If you're not comfortable with money, chances are you're going to avoid doing what you talked about, is calculated risks, or having conversations about other related things that you would be spending money on that could align with vacations, careers, or anything else. So it's not necessarily like how it is in your career. It's just overarchingly, you got to set up the baseline.
Yeah, I would say this about your career. Like, it's not about just even negotiating for like a higher salary with the current job that you're at, but when you're interviewing at other jobs, you're going to be willing to take less money. That first offer that they normally give you is a lowball offer, right? They're going to be like, hey, maybe if we offer this, they'll take it, and then we'll get the same level of work for less pay. That's a win for us as the business, right? But if you're confident in that conversation, if you're confident in talking about money, you're going to go in more well prepared, because you're going to know your skills, you're going to know your value in the market, and you're going to be able to be like, no, Mr. Boss, like, I know what I'm worth. I know what the industry says with my experience and all this other stuff.
Right. You're not even negotiating yet. You're just being able to receive and also participate in a money conversation.
Yeah. Also, like applying for jobs that might be a salary that we're like, oh, I would never thought about asking for that salary. Or maybe that job is something that I would have thought would have been out of my reach. Whereas now you're confident in that conversation. You're confident in the discomfort, right? And you're willing to stretch a little bit more. So all those things that we're talking about, stretching yourself a little bit, you get to a point where you look back and you're like, I'm a heck of a lot stronger than I was 5 years ago, right? And now I'm able to have these conversations.
I'm so glad that you just level set some of this, because it sounds like, at least for me, I should know these things, right? I should know these things, but it's okay if you don't.
Yeah.
And so what I want to say to this, for anybody who is on the market, somebody who is, reach out to Billy, not because it's necessarily vital for your career. Yes, that's a no-brainer, but also the spillover impact that it has on other areas of your spending, and also what you're modeling for other women, mainly your colleagues, your friends, and maybe your daughters and other people there too. Because one of the biggest challenges in our pay gap is that women aren't earning enough. Mm-hmm. And so that gap is not scheduled to actually equalize for like another 30, 40, 50 years. So start with you. Reach out to Billy. And also, thank you so much for listening today to the 3 Booby Traps. And I hope that you enjoyed this discussion. If you did, this doesn't even cost you anything. Please put a podcast review together. These things help us to grow. So write an Apple Podcast review and tell us if you have another booby trap, if there's something else that's holding you back from kind of getting clean and also smart about what you're doing with the money that you're earning. Billy, thank you so much. We'll include show notes where everybody can connect with you. All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Of course.
Thank you for joining today. We appreciate your listening ears. Big time. We ask this: use these tools, not tomorrow, right now, and share them by spreading the love, leaving us a rating and subscribe so you don't miss the next career blast and a half. Most of all, thank you for you.